I want to know what you think the motivation of a lot of these, like particularly radical left-wing activists that want to shut down lectures and scream people down in these auditoriums. What do you think the motivation of these people is, and what do you think is the root of it?
Well, I think that it's a quick route to moral virtue. It's actually really hard to put yourself together, and you have to do that in ways that you can't trumpet. Because most of the things that are wrong with you are kind of low, what would you call it, second-rate and embarrassing. All your stupid little habits and your proclivity to procrastinate, and all the things that you're minorly ashamed of. And then you have to work on those slowly, because the probability that you're going to be able to fix them quickly is low. And you can't really brag about it because it's so embarrassing just to admit that they exist to begin with that you can hardly brag about it. And it's sort of painstaking private work. And you don't get a lot of quick social status for it. It's effortful, embarrassing, humbling, and difficult. And then you can do something like be an activist, and you get all that public acclaim for being on the good side with no effort whatsoever. And so it's a plus.
Do you think that there's any motivation at all to try to make the world a better place?
Yes. I think there's some.
That's part of it.
Sure. Well,
but you think it's flavored by this desire to broadcast your virtue?
Yes, because it's very difficult to make the world a better place. That's the thing young people have a messianic impulse. That's another thing that was documented by Piaget, that there's a stage, in late adolescence where you want to make the world a better place. And I would say that's probably part of the impulse to, establish a permanent relationship and have a family and take care of people, and to take on some of the burden of life. It's the psychological precursor to that. And it's reasonable for smart young people to be concerned about broader philosophical issues if they tilt in that direction as well. But it's all too easy for that to be pathologized into resentment for those who seem to have more unfairly, and also to take the easy route out. And there aren't easy routes. There are only difficult routes to doing useful things, and it's better just to do that. And then, so I think that there's some impulse to, there's some wish that things could be less unfair and that fewer people could suffer. But it's kind of a low-level virtue, that reflexive compassion. I'm not saying it's without merit, because that compassion is the basis for the ability to take care of people who are ill and infants
what
and so forth.
What makes you feel it's low level? Like, where is that?
It's not thought through. Things are complicated. It's hard to make complicated systems work better. And it's really easy to make them work worse.
What about activists that want to shut down certain speakers? Like someone who's, in my opinion, fairly innocuous in terms of like here's one, Christina Hoff Sommers. I don't see a good argument for shutting her down. She's so polite. She's a feminist. She's well read.
Yeah.
She's a really nice person.
Janice Fimenko is like that too in Canada. Same sort of person.
Doesn't make sense that people would shout her down, yet they do.
Oh yeah,
they shout her down. They say horrible things about her. They mischaracterize her in a really brutal way that it completely invalidates their argument or their opposition to her, to anyone that's paying attention to what she said.
Oh well, a lot of it is also just immature acting out.
Yes.
And there's an arrogance to it.
It's tolerated in some sort of very strange way.
Yeah, it is. Well, yeah, it's part of our doubt, I suppose, about authority, and our willingness to assume that all authority is contaminated by power.
It's sanctioned heckling too.
Yeah.
It's almost like if you're doing a play, or a musical, or you're singing a song, and someone just decides to start screaming out. Well, that person's an asshole. But if you're espousing an opinion, and that person decides to scream out, and they do so under the guise of moral virtue.
Well, it's undeserved access to power.
Yes.
And it's no wonder that the radical leftists in particular concentrate on power. Everything's about power. Well, then it's okay if they use power as part of their means of expression. It's like, well, you're just playing power games. it's perfectly reasonable, even appropriate for me to play power games because, I'm oppressed compared to you. If everything's power, then everybody gets to yell.
Right.
And one of the things I realized about recently as well is that there isn't a debate about free speech. Exactly. Not the way that we think about it, because there's the classical defense of free speech. So the classical defense of free speech is that it's better for both of us if we're able to exchange our opinions because I have the opportunity to learn from you and you have the opportunity to learn from me and you have the opportunity to learn from your own mistakes and social feedback, and so do I. And negotiation beats war. Okay, so that's kind of the classical. Now, but that's predicated on some assumptions, and those are you're an autonomous being, you're capable of formulating an opinion that's actually unique to you, and that in dialogue we can mutually modify each other's unique opinions in a way that produces a mutually harmonious and beneficial outcome. That's all the predicate. Well, the people who are opposed to free speech, you see, it's not that they're trying to shut down people whose opinions are different than theirs exactly. It's that they're opposed to the idea that free speech exists. It's a way deeper problem. Because at the bottom of the postmodernist mess is the following assumption, is that, well, there's no one way of interacting with the world that's preferable to any other way. And so what people do is organize themselves into hierarchies of power and then struggle for dominance within the hierarchies, and then the hierarchies struggle between each other. So it's a landscape of warring hierarchies. That's all it is. And you think that you're a person and that you have an opinion, but you're not. You're just the mouthpiece of your privileged hierarchy. And so am I. And it's incommensurate if we're from different hierarchies. There isn't a you talking to a me that could come to an agreement. There's just you acting as a mouthpiece for your power and me acting as a mouthpiece for my power. And so, since I'm part of my group and I want to win because it's all about power, then why the hell would I ever want you to talk? It's not like I have anything to learn from you, or even that learning is possible, or even that there are two people having a discussion. There's nothing but the mouthpiece of power. There's two mouthpieces of power warring. And so why should I listen to you? I'll just shut you down, because then I win. And so this free speech debate isn't about whose opinion should be allowed within, an overarching framework where free speech is a real thing. It's a debate about whether there's such a thing as free speech at all. The radical postmodernist types, they deny even that there's such a thing as an autonomous individual in any way. You're just the nexus of economic forces, economic and social forces. You're entirely socially constructed. There's no you. These are deep criticisms. Like I've made this case before, that the postmodern types, although they have to ally themselves with the Marxists for reasons that we don't have to go into, they are going after things that are so fundamental you can't believe it. There is no autonomous individual in the postmodern world. That's a modernist or an Enlightenment viewpoint, or a Christian viewpoint, or a Judeo-Christian viewpoint, or maybe an Abrahamic religion viewpoint. Who the hell knows? It might be that deep. You're the nexus of sociological forces. There's no integrated self. You don't have ideas or opinions. And there's no dialogue between us. That doesn't exist. There's your group, your identity, your struggle for power, and that's all.
This is your interpretation of it? Or is this something that espoused?
No. This is the fundamental essence of postmodernism. It's especially true in the format espoused by Derrida and Foucault. Foucault, everything's about power. Everything's about power. And Derrida was that's why he criticized the idea of logocentrism. Logos is that ability of the individual to engage in dialogue. The root for dialogue is logos, or logic. That's all criticized. That's all gone. The identity politics players, the people who are serious about this philosophically, they don't believe in the idea of the autonomous individual. That's gone. So it's not like they're playing a game within, you think, well, this is a game, we're all playing a game where we agree on some things and we're just disagreeing about the details. It's like, oh no, you don't want to make that mistake. This critique is way, way deeper than that, which is why Derrida was opposed to the idea of logocentrism. He didn't believe in the idea of an autonomous individual. That didn't exist. That's just a fiction set up by those who have used the idea of the autonomous individual to advance their power maneuvering within the confines of the colonialist West.
Hello, freak bitches.
Well, why would I put my job on the line to have an opinion about developed pronouns? I know why. Because the ability to speak your truth is the bulwark against hell. And losing your job? That's nothing. That's nothing compared to where things can go when they go badly. For me, it was just preventative. It's like, this isn't going in a good direction. Well, should you take a risk? It's like, you don't have that choice. You're silent? That's a risk. Now, most people don't understand the risks of silence. I happen to understand the risks of silence because I've been studying them for 40 years.
Is it frustrating for you to get so little support for these actions and for your protests?
Well, I wouldn't say that that's what happened.
And I don't mean so little support because you're getting a lot of support outside of the university.
It's okay. It doesn't matter where the support comes from. Like, I mean, it's disappointing in the same way that it's disappointing for me to say I think the universities now do more harm than good. That's disappointing. But it doesn't. It's not surprising to me. Like, it isn't as if intellectuals are characterized by an intrinsic moral superiority. Oh, they're smart, so they'll leap to the defense of what's right. It's like, no, there's no evidence for that. Intelligence and moral wisdom aren't the same thing. Like, and if you're corrupt and smart, all that makes you is way more treacherous. It doesn't make you less likely to be corrupt. It just makes you much more. You're 50 snakes instead of 2. Or you're 56-headed snakes instead of 2. Like, I've had clients who were with very serious personality disorders, who are very intelligent. It's like, that's not necessarily a good thing for them. They're just better at arguing for their pathology to themselves.
It is a real problem when people automatically assume that intelligent people are going to be healthy.
Yeah, well, they're healthy in that often they do better in the world. Because their skills are more marketable and so on, but there's no evidence that there's any relationship between intelligence and morality. I mean, God, let me tell you a story. One time I had this client. This woman was just rude. She looked like a street person. She had very dirty clothes, and she was so shy that she couldn't even approach you. She had to shield her eyes from you as if you were emitting light, and she did that to everyone on the street. Like, she was bent over and humble, like a Chinese peasant brought before the emperor. And one of the things I was doing with her in behavior therapy was trying to just get her to present herself in a more normal manner so that people wouldn't shy away from her, be instantly prejudiced towards her. And she'd come to the behavior therapy clinic. And she wasn't bright, this woman. I think she had only had like a 7th grade education. She was quite intellectually impaired. And she lived with her sick aunt who was schizophrenic and who had a satanically possessed alcoholic boyfriend that was always tormenting my client. She lived in absolute hell. But she had this dog, and she used to take it out and walk the dog all the time. And then she'd actually come to the behavior therapy clinic, partly because of her own problem, but she'd come to this place called the Douglas Hospital, and she'd been an inpatient in the Douglas Hospital. And in the Douglas Hospital, there were these long-term psychiatric clients, and they looked like something out of a Hieronymus Bosch painting or Dante's Inferno. I mean, this was way worse than One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. These people were seriously destroyed, and they couldn't be let back out on the streets during deinstitutionalization. They were lifers. And she had decided that part of the reason she wanted to come to the hospital was because she had been institutionalized there, and she thought that maybe when she took her dog out for a walk, she could go and get one of those damn inmates and take them out for a walk too. Now that was a person who was moral, dumb as a post, just screwed in 50 different directions, nothing going for her. And she had the bloody moral capacity to decide that there was someone worse off than her. And believe me, that wasn't easy to find, but maybe she could do them some good if the hospital would let her, which they didn't, by the way. Yeah, well, that's the story of the soul. That's not the intellect. That's for sure. So I didn't expect any support from my colleagues. And it isn't that I don't care if I got it, but in some sense it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to me because my goal was I'm not saying those goddamn pronouns. And the reason I'm not saying them is because they're made up by left-wing ideologues. And I don't like left-wing ideology. I don't like ideology, period. And I know where corruption of speech leads. And I'm not going there. And you know, one of the things I tried to learn when I was taking apart what happened in Auschwitz and trying to put myself in the position of an Auschwitz camp guard, which, by the way, you can do if you use your imagination a bit. I wouldn't call it exactly the world's most pleasant meditative experience, but you can call up parts of yourself that would be capable of taking someone who just got off a transport train and having them carry a 100-pound sack of wet salt from one side of the camp compound to the other and back. You can conjure that part of yourself up if you want, and that'll teach you something about what you're like. People don't do it because it's too frightening, but I know perfectly well that I can do that sort of thing. And so once I learned that I could do that sort of thing, and maybe that I could even enjoy it, I thought, okay, fine, I get it. I'm going to see if I can figure out how to live so that if that opportunity was presented to me, I wouldn't take it. And I think that's the lesson that people need to learn from the 20th century. It's like, that's what human beings did, okay? Well, we're all human, okay? So how is it that we should live so that we don't do that again? Well, part of that is to try to say the truth. No matter what, because the alternative is worse. And it is worse.
The truth no matter what. And that is the real problem that you see with being forced into using these made-up programs.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my language. I'll take responsibility for what I say. I am not saying your words.
Being compelled to say your words by law.
Well, that makes it that takes it past the point of absurdity to the point of tyranny in my estimation.
And I've seen some criticisms where people are saying, you know, he's talking about this, but really he's grandstanding because no one's doing anything legal. But the potential exists.
Oh, that's such rubbish.
But that is one of the arguments.
Yes, they wouldn't have changed the damn criminal. They put it in the hate speech category and altered the criminal code. It's as simple as that. And then you could say, well, no, we didn't really mean it. It's like, oh yeah, you did. You really meant it. Two of the social justice workers that have debated me the last 2 months accused me directly of hate speech. All I had to do was poke them a tiny bit and they came right out with it. And then the university's legal team reviewed everything I said carefully, believe me, and they decided that, oh, it was not only illegal to not use these compelled pronouns, it was probably illegal to make a video saying that I wouldn't use them. Because otherwise, why would they write me a warning letter and tell me that I violated university policy on the Ontario Human Rights Act? They did that lightly?
Have they acted on this at all? Is there?
Well, they won't know. Well, they've acted in that they sent me 2 warning letters and told me to stop talking. And the idea that I was going to be teaching in January again, because I teach all my undergraduate courses from January to May, that was on the table. And I think the only reason that it hasn't happened, one of the reasons it hasn't happened, and I'm not attributing nothing but malevolence to the university administration, because obviously it's very complicated, and they did agree to host the debate, for example. But the idea that I wouldn't be teaching in January, and still might not be, is by no means. That was a perfectly plausible outcome, and had this not caused a firestorm, much of which has emerged in support of me, then I would say there was a 50-50 chance that I would have had my teaching privileges revoked. It's happened to other professors. So the idea that I'm making that this is a tempest in the teapot, it's like, yeah, okay, fine. Why'd you change the criminal code then? And why'd you put it under the hate speech laws? Exactly. So, no, it doesn't wash. And the fundamental proof of that is the university's response, because for sure their legal team crafted those letters. You know, it was like, recalcitrant employee, you're responsible for it. Okay, what do you do with a recalcitrant employee? You write them a letter telling them what they're doing wrong and asking them to stop. Then if they don't stop, you write them a second letter that's more strongly worded. Then if they don't stop, you write them a third letter, even more strongly worded. Then you take disciplinary action. That's like HR 101. That's how you do it.
So here we sit at the end of November, closing in on December. You're literally a bit more than a month away, and you don't know whether or not you're teaching your courses in January?
It seems highly probable that I'll be teaching them. I wouldn't say it's certain, but if I'm teaching them, it's because the cost of having me not teach them would now be too high. It's not because the university believes that what I'm doing is either necessary or accepted.
If someone who's listening to this or watching this feels compelled to act out in your support, how can they do that?
I think they could do a future offer in your expense.
And that would be the best way to act out in your support.
Yes, and I'm dead serious about this. It's like, sort yourself out.
Sort yourself out before you try to figure out the world. And that's the primary objective.
Yeah.
That's your most important thing that you can do. Sort yourself out.
Sort yourself out and marshal your arguments and put yourself in order so that when someone pushes you a little farther than you should go, you can say no.
And you know what's going on now. Hello, freak bitches. You should step back. And this is a narrative that gets repeated over and over again in the social justice warrior culture. This idea that you should just step back and let these others talk because they understand more.
And the others are always other group members.
Yes,
right. And somehow their discourse is to be privileged in reverse because hypothetically they're a member of an oppressed class.
Right.
Of course, then you can multiply the numbers of oppressed classes ad nauseum, which is another part of the problem.
Yeah, like the idea is that in giving them privilege because they have been marginalized, you will balance things out. You will somehow or another reverse the scale.
And that's another example of the class-based guilt idea. You know, it doesn't seem to me self-evident that I'm to blame for slavery, for example. I mean, being a Canadian, it's a slightly different situation, I suppose. But the idea that as a member of the culture, that you're somehow responsible for the past sins of that culture, let's say, it's a very, very anti-Western ethos. It goes along with this idea of class guilt, because your group membership is the most important thing. If your group at some point in the past did something reprehensible, which of course every group has done, that's for sure, then you are de facto responsible in the present for that.
How do you think we got to this point where people are repeating these patterns that were ultimately incredibly unsuccessful and dangerous and deadly in the past, like Marxism, for example? Like, people proudly proclaim themselves as having Marxist ideology.
One in five social scientists claims to be a Marxist.
How do they not understand the history? Why don't you fill people in on how that went bad?
Well, the estimates vary, but in the Soviet Union between 1919 and 1959, somewhere between 30 and 50 million people were killed in internal repression alone. So that's pretty bad. And then in China, which was operating under exactly the same principles, it might have been up to 100 million killed during Mao's time. And of course, Mao is still revered in China, appallingly enough. And Vietnam and Cambodia, wherever these ideas were implemented, Cuba, wherever these ideas were implemented, the result was absolute mayhem. And I think what happened is that the Marxist ideas are actually quite attractive if you're an intellectual and if you're, I would say, if you're tilted towards compassion from a personality perspective, because they're based on doctrines like from each according to his ability to each according to his need. And the idea that you should fulfill people's needs, or that society should fulfill people's needs, is on the surface of it an attractive idea. Of course, the problem is who gets to define the needs and who gets to define the abilities, and that really is a big problem. And then those ideas were put into practice. First in the Soviet Union, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who wrote the Gulag Archipelago, did a very lovely job of detailing horrifying detail how those initial doctrines were transformed into legislation, and then how those legislation was transformed into endless genocide, essentially, and almost destroyed the world. Let's not forget that. Partly with the help of Castro, who just died. The doctrines, when put into actual practice, were murderous instantaneously. Now, what happened? There were always apologists for the left in the West, especially in France, especially among the French intellectuals, especially in the late 1960s. And then, when all of the information about what was happening in the Soviet Union came flooding forward, and that culminated, say, about 1973, when the Solzhenitsyn book was published, the French intellectuals changed their tune. Instead of advocating on the part of the working class, which allied them with the murderous Marxists, they switched and started to talk about power and talk about group identity. It was like a sleight of hand. The underlying pathological philosophy remained exactly the same, but the surface nomenclature changed. And that became very attractive. And at the same time, the Soviet Union dissolved. And so one of the problems I think we have now, a perverse problem, is that these Marxist ideas are very attractive to compassionate intellectuals. And we don't have good, bad examples like the Soviet Union around that everybody can point to and go, yeah, well, that sounds good. But, what about the murderous death camps and the millions of people who are suffering? We still have North Korea, but people treat North Korea like it's a joke instead of like it's an exemplar of a pathological system. And people have no historical memory, like my students. And that's partly because they're taught so badly in schools. Is they have no idea what happened in the Soviet Union. They have absolutely no idea. They know a little bit about the Second World War, maybe. And of course, people generally know about the Holocaust, but they have no idea what happened in the Soviet Union. So they have no idea where these ideas can lead. And the universities and the high schools are so full of people who are radically left-leaning that they're never taught any, the students are never taught any proper history. They're taught about the evils of capitalism. And it's not like any system is perfect, but there's difference between imperfect and consciously murderous.
I think one of the things that you just said that's very important is that it's attractive to compassionate intellectuals, people that, without really looking at what the potential for these laws and regulations, what the negative potential for them is, the underlying inclination to lean towards that is that you care about people and that you want people to be okay.
You're kind of treating them like they're your children.
Yes.
And I don't mean that in an entirely sarcastic manner. It's reasonable in some sense to treat other people like people that you love, although it's not reasonable in very many other ways, which is why you don't invite every stranger on the street to come and live with you in your house. I mean, everybody puts up boundaries, and you have to do that. But and people tend more than we ever expected. I've done a lot of research into this in my lab. People do tend to vote and think their temperament a lot more than anybody really realizes. And if you're kind and that's your highest virtue, then you tend to treat people like your kin, because that's what kind means. It's an extension of the word kin. But that doesn't work well in larger groups. You need other principles. And so you look at something like the idea of equity, which is equality of outcome rather than equality of opportunity. On the surface of it, it seems perfectly reasonable to say, well, if every resource isn't distributed...
Hello, freak bitches.
Well, we've tried other online interventions too. So I have these YouTube videos up, but we also I worked with some corporations a while back. I've done some consulting. I designed tests to help people hire better employees, which I still do. And in fact, I work with this company up in California called the Founder Institute, and it's the world's largest stage early technology company incubator. It's created 2,500 companies in the last 4 years, and we test now in 135 cities. But when I was marketing these tests to companies, they kept asking me what could be done about their poorer performing employees. And I said, well, I don't know, because it's not that easy to, if you have someone who's problematic, who's troubled, it's not that easy for a manager to figure out how to straighten them out. They just don't have the time. They don't have the time, they don't have the manpower, they don't have the training usually to do that. But I designed this set of programs called the Self-Authoring Suite. And one of them, the Future Authoring Program, helps people write out a plan for their life. So it helps them, it asks you some questions about 6 dimensions of your life. Your health, mental and physical, your use of drugs and alcohol, your wishes 3 to 5 years down the road for relationships, for family, for career, for education, and so on. It asks you, what could your life be like 3 to 5 years down the road if you set it up for you like you were someone you were taking care of? So it asks you those 6 questions. Then it asks you to write for 15 minutes about your vision for your life. You get to have what you want and what would be good for you. What would that be? And then it asks you to write for 15 minutes about what your life would be like 3 to 5 years down the road if you let your bad habits and your idiocies and your foolishnesses and your weaknesses take the upper hand and auger you into the ground. Because everyone knows about that. So it's like you get to design a little heaven to strive for, a little hell to avoid, and then you write for, then you basically turn that into an implementable plan. That's the second part of the program. We've used that for about 5 to 7,000 university students now, mostly in Europe at the Rotterdam School of Management. And we've raised their grade point average of their kids 25%, dropped the dropout rate the same, and it's had a walloping effect on men and on non-Western ethnic minorities. It's moved the non-Western ethnic minority student population performance at Rotterdam School of Management from 70% below the average to above the female Dutch natives. And so the reason I'm telling you this, apart from the fact that it's a very good program, and we did it at Mohawk College in Canada a year ago. We dropped their dropout rate in the first semester 50%, and that especially again worked well for men because men are at more risk of dropping out now, and especially for men who didn't have good grades in high school. So not only is there the possibility for the net to provide tremendous dissemination of intellectual material, but there's also the possibility for the net to provide dissemination of psychological interventions that have major impacts on people's mental health and productivity at extraordinarily low cost. So that's really been fun too.
Well, I think providing that sort of a structure and a framework, giving people the tools, just in form of asking them questions. What would you like to do? Please describe this. What is your... And when you do that, you sort of allow them to help themselves outline what they would like to accomplish, which most people don't do.
No, well, in our education system was designed in Chicago in the late 1800s to produce factory workers, because it was set up when rural people were migrating to the cities en masse because their kids, first of all, were likely to get factory jobs, and second of all, if you were working in a factory, your kids needed to be taken care of. And so the purpose of the schools was to train factory workers, which is why everyone was lined up in rows and why there are bells. It's a factory model. The problem with that is that now people's careers basically have to be self-determined, but that's never part of the education system. Part of the reason I developed these programs was because I realized this is the same course where I'm teaching students that if they would have been in Germany in the 1930s, they would have been Nazis. I'm trying to get them to design their lives. So it's way better to have someone articulate their own plan. You actually neurologically rewire people by having them formulate their own thoughts, which is why school teachers used to say, put it in your own words. It's actually very good advice if they would explain what that means. It's like, if you have to conjure up the thoughts and you have to articulate them, then they change you. And so this program has had the effects have been absolutely overwhelming for us as researchers, because it's very, very difficult to produce an intervention that actually has a positive effect on people. You hope it does, but generally when you test it out, it's like, no, it doesn't do what you thought it did, or sometimes it even has the reverse effect.
That sounds fascinating. Now, can a regular person have access to this?
It's called self-authoring. So that's S-E-L-F, authoring, like writing a book, self-authoring.com. And the programs, I gave away the future authoring program. I think it might still be free. It is till the end of November. I did a video called Message to Millennials, because one of the things Jonathan Haidt said about, he called Karl Marx the patron saint of the social justice warriors, and John Stuart Mill the patron saint of people saying he stood for objective truth and freedom of expression. I thought that was really smart. He said Brown University is #1 for social justice warrior universities in Chicago, for truth universities. But one of the things that Marx has over John Stuart Mill is that Marx is a social revolutionary, and young people like to think about ways to change the world, right? And that's actually a positive part of their development. It's a stage that the developmental psychologist Jean Piaget called the messianic stage, and he associated that with late adolescence. It's like, while young people want to change the world, the problem is that that's being harnessed into attempts to change other people. But that's what you should do. If you want to change the world, you should change yourself. And I don't mean that in some cliched sense. I mean it in the sense that Alexander Solzhenitsyn said when he analyzed the Soviet Union. He said, don't be thinking that the line that divides good from evil runs down a political spectrum or countries or something like that. It runs down right down the middle of your soul. And if you want to sort out the world, then what you do is you sort yourself out. It's a serious business, right? They say it's more difficult to rule yourself than to rule a city. And that's the truth. Because you're complicated, and there are horrible monsters inside of you that need to be tamed and to be brought into alignment and submission, so that you can be a powerful and useful person. And I gave away the Future Authoring Program as part of this video I made, suggesting to millennials that instead of rushing out there to change the world by changing other bad people, that they should look inward and sort themselves out properly. And I think we've given away about 4,000 or 5,000 of those programs so far.
You said it's free till the end of November, and then what happens with it?
The Future Authoring Program is regularly $14.95, and the whole self-authoring suite, which involves, it's a program that helps you write an autobiography, so it helps you sort out things about your past that are still burdening you. You can tell, if you have a memory that's more than 18 months old, approximately, and when you pull that memory up to mind, if you still have an emotional reaction, that means you haven't fully articulated the memory. You haven't analyzed it causally. You haven't freed yourself from its grasp, and you're carrying it like a weight. And your brain responds to that. Like the more weight you're carrying like that, more baggage, let's say, the more of the stress hormone cortisol your brain produces, and cortisol makes you old. Some of this work has been done by